Hello everyone, and welcome back to another one of those tier discussions. This time we're going to be doing nature melee, and the reason for doing this instead of streaming or anything else today is that we have on Friday an event coming up, and it's going to be nature, and it's probably going to be some of the heroes that we have here. It seems going to be the scrap event, about which I will talk in a minute. So it may be interesting for you to see what the heroes are that are showing up, how they rank to other nature heroes, because maybe one of you would like to participate in the event and try to finish it. So without further ado, let's just quickly go again through the tier system that we have designed. So on the first side over here, we have the god tier. The god tier is really limited to a few heroes. As we mentioned in other videos, God tier is only for heroes that are really game warping and game changing, that are able um, to force your opponent to really deal with those heroes or simply lose the game. They are beyond good. They are basically the things pulling your team over the edge in multiple games. And usually one of the main reasons why you win are these god tier heroes. We saw a few in older range that were very strong. And we've been seeing almost at least one on each of the categories we have seen so far. And it's not different here in melee for nature. The top tier are basically the backbone of the top heroes that you will be playing. They're all really good. They can be even almost god tier like. For example, Strick, it can be discussed as Strick is almost god tier like sometimes. But usually they're not as strong as the god tier level. The good tier over here is heroes that are good, they're not embarrassing to play, they're generally well valuable and useful, and can be doing good combinations and serving good roles of support, attack, or defense in your team. The next tier is the meh tier, which is heroes that are not really that impressive, and you will play them in Dark Tower if you have to, but you're not really happy about it. And of course, the next tier is going to be the trash can tier, which are heroes that are just below average, way below average in performance and are really bad. And there's also a combo tier that is reserved for heroes who are generally almost trashy, but in certain combo aspects they become really good, even sometimes god tier like. We have encountered just a few of those so far, but I believe in the next two tiers we'll have a few more. Also, one thing to mention for people watching this video for the first time, we always talk here in this tier level about maximum power, meaning 5th reborn or higher, ultimate power level of these heroes. And things change and differ for lower power levels, 1st reborn, 2nd reborn. And if there are big differences, I will mention them in the comments. It depends on how good this hero scales. Some heroes are really good at lower tiers, but then eventually don't scale really well. Other heroes are the opposite. They are not very impressive at lower tiers, but really lower power levels, but really scale enormously. So with the further ado, let's start with the god tier, and it's going to be the rat scrap, the trash king. The garbage king is basically a fighting machine. He has a decent attack, decent defense. He can even survive one full blast from Freddy. But what's really impressive is with a double attack, stealing on death from the opponent over 190, and also special pierce, so it does the damage to the whole line. This thing just really rips through stalemates, rips through opponents, rips through everything. He can really swing games completely, making all the remaining units useless, pumping himself in attack to very huge amounts. And you can even combo with him if you have, for example, a way to destroy a lot of creatures before he shows up, before he actually attacks. Then he can get all the steal benefits up front and then double attack for I think up to 4,000 damage maximum, which for one shot it's pretty impressive. So all in all, Scrap, you always have to draw him. His stealing also can give you some sort of defense against boards that are clogged where you have very little chance. And he's always going to be hitting that Afro behind the bush, that Mina behind the bush, all those pesky little shooters that can really ruin your life. So he is one of the most useful and most versatile attacking offense heroes you will find. And for that, he deserves to be at God level. So I believe that from rumors, he's going to be in the next event. So be sure to check him out. Maybe he's something you will be interested in. Usually in his event, the other heroes that are going to be showing up traditionally is Eric and Grood. So maybe those will be exactly the same heroes that we see again. Now, if we move to the top tier, there we will have first Eric, who is primarily a tank with some combo potential upside. So his defense at maximum is way over 800, which is almost impossible to kill in one shot. But not just that, he also steals attack from the heroes appearing. So even if you manage to get up to 800 damage somehow on the one attack, he will still, if you place the hero on that turn, he will still steal you usually enough to stick around. Additionally, on kills he gets even more health, so he can grow himself and become even more of a tank over time. But what's really impressive is every time he gets attacked, he gives double attack to every ranged unit you have. So the play pattern is going to be put him at the front, drop your ranged units behind, let him get all sorts of smacks, and just multiple attack with all your range for massive damage. Usually something like a Floss or one of those strong range creatures, Tengu, those are going to be the ones you're going to be combining this with, or even with one of those great other creatures, for example, Strick for just massive destruction and massive pumping of Eric as well. So all in all, very annoying creature, very difficult to handle. Obviously, one of the problems with him is alone he is just not really that impressive. It's just a bit stick that is tanking around and doesn't do much. But in combination with the combo potential, he can be really, really good. So excellent hero, check him out. Next one here on the list is going to be Me Ten Tails, who is a hero that is very strange because she has this ability to do damage to a random unit, to all units in the same way to one unit, and she really becomes incredible after the fourth reborn. On the first reborn, she does around 25% damage of total health. On the second, about 50. On the third, about 75. And on the fourth and fifth, she goes 100%, which means many times she can just clear the board if she happens to choose the highest defense on your opponent. She just clears the board, wiping everything out, which can be devastating and even has combo potential with things like Apep to give a reborn and do it over and over again. Obviously, there's the risk of just hitting a very low defense unit, but still at 100% you'll even be able to kill that unit, so you will always kill something. The reason why she's not God tier is that her rest of abilities and her general presence is very underwhelming, even at maximum power. So she has relatively low attack, fairly good defense, but it's very unimpressive. So it's all about this come into play effect. When you drop her, she just can swing the game in your favor. But it's not. After that, she's not going to be pulling any weight. Also to consider the random effect that she has is going to be completely different to what a Strick has, who you're able to plan in advance to see what damage is going to happen where. She just does a bunch of damage, and sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. And if the AI is playing, you can be assured it's going to be always great. It's going to be always wiping everything out. Next up is Circuit, the Scorpion, who is a very special type of tank. And this is something also you will see in nature over and over again. There are many tanks, many units in melee with over 500 defense. And Circuit is no exception. She has way over 700. And she is also able, for every kill that she makes, she gets even more hit points. So she can block really a line, but her incredible ability that makes her a top hero is going to be her toxin delivery. Every turn she delivers 75% toxins to the opponent, to creatures of the opponent. That's going to just decimate the attack levels of the opponent. And it's going to be incredibly hard for the opponent to really create a proper attack. So she can basically sometimes stall the whole board for the opponent on her own, and she's going to be very difficult to remove. Additionally, if she has a clear path and she gets to hit the warlord, she can snipe a creature directly from the opponent with, I think, over 700 damage or something like that. So really impressive stuff in terms of abilities. The downside of her, of course, is going to be that her attack is not that impressive. She does skill very well. She is super annoying, and it's going to be a nightmare for many decks to handle. But on her own, she just does 200 damage, so that's not really something that at high power levels is going to move anything significantly. Next one is a pet hero of mine, Tsukumogami. He was on my very first event, and partially on his strength, I was able to climb to GM, so I'm really fond of him. He is one of those heroes. I think there's one in each faction. There's Koshei in Chaos, and there's Diana in Order, that really ramps power and defense super fast and becomes very annoying. So if you drop him a few turns later, he will have triple or even quadruple his power and defense as well. The thing that sets him apart of the other two is that he has evasion, so he's just not stopped by things like Alex or different range units, so that can be very powerful. However, one of the main problems that you have with these super high ramping heroes is they can be a big liability when facing a totem or things like a hoodoo. So you have to watch out, usually place them in second row instead of the first, just to be sure that you can still stop the bulb rather than getting killed by one of them. Very impressive beta, particularly interesting if you manage to get him to double hit, but he only covers one line, so he's not really in any form god tier or anything like that. Next one on the list, Cavas, the Wasteland Armadillo. And to be honest, this is one of the heroes that I'm really most scared about. Every time I see a strong version of him, I just marvel at how many annoying abilities he has and what of an insane tank he is. So first of all, he can reflect damage to range. Every time you hit him, he hits back to range that you have, so that can be super. And he hits twice, so he hits 2 units. So for every 1 hit, he hits 2 units. That can be really strong, and he even reflects 100% of the damage he gets. So the stronger you hit, the more he does. Additionally, he grows in defense the more he attacks. So sometimes he can get 500 blocks or block abilities or things like that, and he also protects the world as well. So he has a really high defense, I think over 700. He grows and blocks more and more, and he also reflects damage. So really annoying thing. It's not the best attacker, of course, but it can really screw up your math, and it can really make a lane no longer worth playing. So that's what makes him a top hero. And even on smaller scales, in small versions, he can be still really, really great and block complete lines and stop the enemy from coming over. The next hero is Shiesha, everyone's favorite blue tiger. Now, Shiesha at maximum power is one of the strongest things you will ever encounter in terms of attack and attack potential. He basically has a very similar ability to me 10 tails, but he always hits. And if the units that he's attacking are connected, so are next to each other, the ability will just keep bouncing and bouncing, and eventually it will kill 3, 4, 5, I see up to 6 units with one single stroke. That can be really, really impressive. And that ability alone makes him already really, really good. But additionally, as is traditional in nature, he's also going to be pumping both his attack and his defense, which can be really incredible. The fact that his ability is random and is a bit situational, and the fact that he needs some kind of setup to be able to be good, so he's more of a turn 3, turn 4 hero rather than a turn 1, turn 2 hero, means that he doesn't quite reach the top level, although sometimes when you get to strike something and kill 5 other units with one single strike, you do believe that he is kind of a god tier worthy hero. Sometimes he doesn't really do that much, so it's not that impressive. Next hero that we have here is going to be Ananta, the queen, and she is very famous at low levels because it's one of the earlier heroes that you get. And many people just get discouraged by her because eventually she gets outclassed at low power levels by other heroes you have. But let me tell you, at high power levels, her ability to multiply poison and to poison multiple units just becomes a massive poison wave that can really wipe out the whole board on her own, and additionally giving her a massive boost on every single trigger of the spikes of poison. If you kind of combine her with a few other units in poison, she can be just really, really excellent. What doesn't make her god tier in this case is her mediocre attack, and also the necessity to have some kind of setup to create a big poison event with Melia or things like this. But still, great hero, and as you can see, many of the heroes here are mostly on their ability to be strong tanks and also on the ability to destroy creatures, which is something that nature desperately wants because they have so few range units that can actually pull the weight. The final 2 units in the top category of heroes for melee are 2 heroes that were recently reworked for events that we have had lately. One is going to be Loath, the massive fungus, and the other one is the Monkey King. And they're pretty similar in what they do, but there's some difference in how you use them. Loath, on the one hand, the big champion walking around, he's great at clearing the path and destroying creatures. So he's, again, one of those massive tanks that Green usually has, with over 600 defense. But additionally to that, he also places the ability of kind of like an explosion if one unit gets hit, and also hits all the opponent units every turn automatically through a kind of a lightning from the sky. And he's also able to pump himself and pump allies during battle. So very good team player, very good combination, great at clearing the path. He used to be terrible, but now he's more or less useful. I believe he's one of the top heroes in this case at the high level because he scales very well. The fact that he comes just shy of 200 attack doesn't make him any consideration for the god level. He's just not strong enough to do so, but he can be a really good support hero, clearing the path and basically wrecking the opponent's board, like Me 10 before, or the Tiger, or Ananta and a circuit to some extent as well. The monkey, on the other hand, has a very similar usage than the Dead Lord. He has a really strong defense, of course, also using blocking ability and giving block ability to other people, but he can reflect attacks and pump himself based on allies being attacked. So he will reflect not just damage that he gets, but also the damage that he can do as he gets pumped over and over again while while the opponent attacks normally. So that can be really, really strong at some point, and he can just kill the unit that was supposed to be stopping him and then crack back with a very high damage account. Again, this unit needs a bit of setup to be great. On its own, it's not really that powerful, and it's just a beta. You can silence him, you can stop him in many different ways. But he can be very annoying, he can be very difficult to remove, and this pumping ability can get him to huge levels later in the game, forcing the opponent to sacrifice a creature every turn to be able to stop him. So top creature, very good rework. The former version of Con was basically useless, but this one is pretty good to very, very decent. Now if we switch to the next tier level, we have some interesting characters over here. Most of them are just brutal tanks with different upside abilities. Starting with the Panda Confucius, who has been in a very recent event and has been reworked as well. He is now the only immune creature that nature has, the first one, which that already is super impressive. And he also has the ability to dump runes when hit, 2 of them, with very high damage, and also every time every turn, if the opponent has damage creatures, he's able to pump your whole team for each creature, which can create 2, 3, 400 plus damage growth on all your creatures within one turn. I'm seriously considering putting him at the top. I've recently, through the Reborn Fable, was able to put him in 5th Reborn level 24, and he has been really impressive in terms of performance. So actually, he's probably more of a top hero than a good hero, but when I did this evaluation before, he was still here. I hadn't played enough with him. I still haven't probably played enough with him, but he can be he's just generally great at blocking, but also through his other abilities, the runes and the pumping, he's kind of like a blocker that also attacks. So he blocks a line completely, but also keeps giving you an incremental advantage to mount the attack and increase the attack of the opponent. I think that can be very valuable as an asset to have in the field. Next up is Dandy Crook, one of the better attackers that nature has in melee in terms of power and power generation potential. The Crook is impressive because every attack the opponent does, he just gets more and more spikes. So eventually he becomes this walking bomb that if you don't kill in one shot, you will need multiple heroes sacrificed in order to stop him, and that can be very valuable as well. Of course, I'm not counting on silencing or anything like that. That can be helpful, but usually, if you silence him, he will still stick around. And he will still have impressive stats to keep hitting you in the face with. So he's a good hero. He has some good abilities to ramp up attack and defense. He can also tank pretty well, even though he can be just killed by Freddy on arrival. But he's a good hero. His lesser versions, I play them in Dark Tower all the time. I call them Nop Nop because they kind of make some sounds with the attacks. So he's a good hero, not embarrassing, and I think he was reworked as well lately, and I think they did a good job on that. He's very useful now. Next one is Vatahudi, the Totem Pole, the patron saint of Japanese players, it seems, because many of them are playing Hoodoo and the Totem, and they love to place them. and the AI also loves to place a totem somewhere. This totem, it can be devastating, especially at lower power levels, because you're usually lacking the tools to remove him without getting damage yourself, and that reflect damage can win you many games. So at low power levels, he's really, really great. At higher power levels, even if you get him to maximum 700 hit points or something, there's still many ways you can bypass the totem or just kill him indirectly through splash damage and similar. So if you watch it a little bit and don't play the high beating units in the first row where it's difficult to save them, you're going to be able to navigate the totem pretty well. So for that reason, he's not top, but he's still good and he can still win you a game and steal you a game. And there's even a warlord that brings his totems with him, so that can be also useful in that scenario with that skin. Next one is the Marquis, our little ram, and he's a great unit because of the accidental or incidental life gain that you have when he gets hit. You get some life back for your warlord. But what really makes him impressive is the poisoning ability. So every time the opponent attacks, he gets to poison them. In my opinion, he is one of the Dark Tower All-Stars and one of the strongest cards in Dark Tower because you just park him somewhere we have in the bush. He stays there and just keeps poisoning the whole team of the opponent that eventually melts down. And unless there is some kind of a clearing unit like Alex or Lotrex or Snow, not Snow, Frost, the opponent is going to have a very tough time dealing with him. His attack is not really strong at maximum level, just below 300, but his defense is outstanding with over 700, close to 800. So you can really tank, sit there, poison everyone, and just even if he gets killed, he just gives you incidental additional hit points. So all in all, a great package, very very useful hero. The next unit is a fascinating case of a unit that is grossly underrated in my opinion. So the Lizard King, no way, he's not king, he's just a prince. The Lizard King, Prince Snake, has the second highest printed attack value in the game, just after Freddy. And you know I'm a very big fan of Freddy. He goes almost up to 500 damage with an attack, and I think that's overlooked by everyone or most of the people. Normally, I rarely see him playing any major role in teams. He also has this one-time invulnerability, which can be very useful to just block a line, get you a breather, and even when he dies, he dispatches pretty much 4 death runes, which can be also really interesting in combination with other board clogging elements, and really make your opponent struggle to mount a real good attack, or just buy you time through killing different things. Sorry, made that 5 runs at maximum level, so very impressive. 5 runs is almost half of the board actually. What he leaves behind, so pretty good package, pretty good attacker with that defensive option. I think he's underplayed, but probably most of the people don't have a good version. For the next one, we have the Dragon Iona, who is one of the newbie heroes. So she's in the newbie event when somebody starts the game, and at that time she's really impressive. She does splash damage. She can hit multiple rows. She flies. She's difficult to handle. So it's a great package, and I believe that package still remains pretty good over time. However, his scaling at very high levels just doesn't match what other heroes can do. So his blast damage is still unimpressive at maximum. Flying is obviously good, but it's not anything out of the ordinary. And the pumping ability is not going to be too impressive, but still useful to have. So it's a good hero. It has a good function. It can do some good things in the air, and it's probably pretty great in Dark Tower, of course. So in order to make this video not too long, we're going to speed up through a few of these. El Mariachi, Serun, and the Mantis, they are both good offensively. Interesting. El Mariachi is useful because he just reflects random damage on attacks. The Druid is good because of the stealing ability and also dropping a big totem after he dies, which can sometimes give you a game. And the Mantis is really impressive. The Mantis has a really high attack value. I think I have to correct my statement before. She has the second highest printed attack value after Freddy, and I think she has like 8 or 10 more attack than the Lizard Snake. So she can be really strong, and she also steals a lot of attack from others, so she can ramp up really quickly. She's just a bit stick, but those sets of abilities can be interesting and can be good for a team. Now, Cat Lady, the little basket, she is basically the only splash damage on entry that nature has, and that can be very useful to a team. The problem with her, and the reason why she's not greater, is her splash damage is not really too high, so it's not comparable to Devil or Freddy levels. But it's usually enough to remove all the obstacles and hit somebody behind a bush or any other obstacle. So that's good. And she also has a few other abilities like healing allied creatures when she is destroyed. So all in all, an interesting, good unit. Unfortunately, as she's one of the early heroes that you get, she doesn't scale really well, but she's still an interesting unit. And then we have Morgan, the shark, who's going to probably be reworked. He's interesting because of his retaliation and the fact that every time somebody tries to attack him, they get one attack. So the attack level drops to 1. So he can be interesting in that way because it's difficult to kill. But it's just another beta, and he can just be destroyed like everything else through splash damage or other means. So unfortunately, he's not as impressive. He's not terrible, but he's usually good enough. And the last 3 heroes that we have here, Triton, Grood, and the Minotaur, they have a similar role, which is making the game go longer and stalling, basically. Grood is really great at low power levels. He's not really that impressive at high power levels because, yes, he's a tank, yes, he blocks a lot and he can pump himself, but he really only delays the inevitable. So he basically just gives the opponent a breather. Instead of keeping up the pressure and attacking, you get to remove the ability of a few units and not impact the board too much. So mostly just block a little bit. So he's not top in my opinion because of that. And as you know, I don't value silence that high anyway. So it's almost for me difficult to put him in good because usually whenever people play him against me, I say shrug and just proceed to keep mounting pressure. One thing that must be said as well about him is in some situations and for some scenarios, he's one of the few heroes that can really get you out of a lot of difficult positions. But those positions are mostly corner cases, and for me, it outweighs the fact that he's just not really impressive offensively. And the Triton is even worse than that because his attack is very low, and he keeps silencing over and over again, and he keeps ramping up his defense. So he can be at some point like a wall of fish that is impossible to penetrate, and that keeps silencing whatever you shoot and whatever you try to go with. Very annoying, very stalling, difficult to remove, but not really getting the game further. He can be great if you have good range attack behind him, but nature is not famous for that. And the Minotaur is, I think, particularly strong at low power levels because every attack your units do that connect to the warlord, it gives you life, which can swing games dramatically and give you enough life swing to just win damage races that you're losing anyway. At high power levels, he's not really that impressive, but Taurus's life swing can really tip the scale for you. And then finally, in the last two categories, if we go to the meh category, we have the big Harpy, who is usually used a lot by the in the Divine Arena, for example. And he's really great in Dark Tower because flying and hitting can really stop out of difficult units that don't fly in melee. But that's pretty much it. Enlil the Harpy does have a comparatively high attack with over 400, but her rest of abilities beyond flying are not really that great, and she's just easily outclassed by many units. The next main category unit is Coba, who is the tank of tanks. He has the highest printed defense of any unit in its first form, and when he dies, he gets a second form, which goes up to, I think, 1,500 hit points. So massive tank, but that's about it. That's all he can do. He does have some minor poison ability and some life gain associated with that, but he's just a big stupid tank. That doesn't have very much impact beyond that, so pretty meh. Not really. I wouldn't put him in the good category. And the trash can level, well, we have everyone's favorite frog, Prince Nod, who is one of the newbie beginner heroes, and he's really impressive when you start because you have barely seen any Legos, and at that point he's really great. However, he just doesn't scale. The higher you go, his values remain almost flat, so he just is outclassed by almost every other hero in the game, even at maximum level. So it's not really worth what he has. And some people demand the frog to be stronger, but I mean, the multiple chains which you can have for developing the frog, and I think something has to be the worst, and it's okay that he is kind of the owl of melee for nature. I'm fine with that. It makes him so much cooler when you play him and manage to do anything useful with him. And people watching my stream know I'm a big fan of frogs anyway, so eventually I will play him as well. And finally, also on the trash can level, Yermund, who in theory has good stats. I mean, over 400 attack and 400 defense, that's pretty good. But the fact that his ability of freezing is random, and the fact that the other two abilities are also connected to that random ability, just makes him pretty useless, all in all. And even if you had a maximum level 1, you would still probably struggle to actually use him. So he's not really great, he's not really useful, and it's mostly embarrassing to see him. Even in Dark Tower or in other places, he's just not really a great hero. So that's it for melee. As you can see, melee nature, lots of good stuff, lots of top heroes that can be leveraged. Many of them are coming in the next event, so I expect a lot of turnout for that one. Good feeding bracket of good heroes. I think Panda probably will likely go up for me one category at least, because I'm enjoying playing him a lot at high levels. So he's really that good now, and he can really impress you with what he does. All in all, very serviceable heroes, useful heroes, combine well with each other, lots of pumping, back and forth, attack and defense, poison sub-themes, very interesting bunch. Unfortunately, not such a good range in terms of level, and the powers, as you can see, they're kind of redundant. Many of these units are interchangeable, so you can use the Crook or use the Druid. Doesn't make much of a difference, which is a bit of a pity because nature deserves more interesting abilities as well than what they have at the moment, I think. But they work well with each other, they work well in tandem, and they also work well with the range units that are available. So enjoy them when you can. And hopefully, if you like the video, keep going. I will do the next tier one probably this week, which is going to be Oda. And then for the final showdown, we're going to see the best heroes in melee who are mostly in chaos, of course. There we'll see the true gods of the game. Thank you very much. See you then. And if you have any comments, any ideas, just leave them in the chat. Happy to respond. Thank you very much. Bye.